Contemplate the workings of the inner being. Your eyes are wide open, but are you really seeing? We are back.
And front.
And side to side. Slide, baby, slide.
Dip,
Slide.
baby, dip.
I had that too.
My name is Ta.
My name is Cole.
We are Ta Cole, and this is Mentor in the Mirror podcast.
We're going to talk about empathy, y'all.
I feel for you.
Do you?
Sorta.
Ish.
Most of the
I
time.
know that I don't want to be by you because of how you feel.
Well, I want to understand how you feel. I do understand. I get it.
If I hurt enough, then I'm doing something about your hurt feelings. If I hurt as much as you hurt.
Then it's justified.
Is that empathy?
I don't know.
I feel like that's what a lot of people describe as empathy when I really... Can you break down a little bit what empathy is for anyone listening right now?
Basically, empathy is I understand what you're feeling. I get what you're feeling. I feel what you're feeling. It's an idea. It's not an idea. It's a topic of a lot of discussion. It's a topic of a lot of mixed vantage points that people have. And my vantage point on empathy is a very complicated, very complex one. When a person walks in a room and my body starts to feel sad or happy or whatever, I'm picking up on another person's vibe, and that is an empathetic situation, an empathic situation where you feel akin to somebody else in a space that's very like what somebody else is feeling. Oh yeah, I was feeling that way too. That's empathy.
Do you think that everyone has empathy?
Everybody has levels of empathy. Everyone does. It's like everybody.
Do you think it's the awareness of it that shifts as far as people?
It's different in everybody. It's like taste. Everybody tastes. Well, most people anyway. Some people are unable to taste things. Not if they've got the COVID. I don't know, man. Yeah, we can get into that too. But there are different levels of taste, and there are different levels of smell, and there are different vantage points in smell and taste, just like empathy. Empathy is a space where it's a sense, and it is a felt sense of kinship. It's a felt sense of feeling, sensation, emotion, connection. And since we are human beings, we can drive empathy through concept. So when we are told a story, we can feel empathy. We can feel empathy for the characters in the story.
Well, and I feel like there's people that struggle to experience empathy with humans, but with animals,
yeah,
they find deep empathy, or with causes, or with something. But I've yet to meet someone that has empathy for nothing.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who doesn't have empathy at all. And there are some people who are really, really highly sensitive, and they call themselves empaths, or they are called empaths. And these are people who have a tough time detaching themselves or removing themselves from other people's sensations or situations or stories or whatever. And their boundaries are different than what would probably be considered the common folk. And the common folk may be
the muggles.
Well, the common folk may be people who haven't been programmed to shut their empathy off, either through circumstances or through genetics, right? Mm-hmm. Through epigenetics. People have been taught through lineages to shut empathy down.
Well, I think that it is as you're saying, a sense. If you live in a dangerous place, one way to cope is to compartmentalize and disassociate mm-hmm. from feeling in general.
Right.
Or if you've got a chronic medical condition, or, arguably one creates the other or vice versa. However, the times that I meet people that explain or say that they don't have empathy, I can usually track back to some point in their childhood that they had to disassociate from feelings, whether it was a mentally ill mother, mm-hmm. and so they could not handle it, or there was just a lot of stuff going on in their life that was overwhelming. So it was a coping mechanism to no longer feel.
Right. Yeah, and so there's this place of having active empathy, right? Which is you are active in you're empathetic because you're choosing to be empathetic. You're empathetic because it's something that's in your aware space. And then there's passive empathy, where when, you know, somebody just walks in a room and you feel yucky, or you feel happy, or you feel whatever, it's just happening to you. And then there's selective empathy, where it's like, okay, I'm going to choose to feel empathy for these people and not these people. And that's a programmed empathy that you can actually shift and manipulate and change by choice.
I mean, look how easily people can find empathy for children and not adults. That's a very common one that we come across too, that people can find empathy for children starving in Africa, not the homeless person begging on the side of the street, you know. And it is that, and then going with animals too, because they're more defenseless according to a person's cosmology, they are almost more deserving of empathy.
Right. And so there's a value that's placed on a person's circumstance, a person's body, a person's whatever. And that falls into a lot of different categories, you know, of a person's situation. You know, how did the person how were they brought up? Who traumatized them, you know, or you know, who was associated with their traumas, who was associated with their dramas, who still is. And when you can look at that, and you can remove all of those things and actually lean into empathy, because you are creating and crafting an empathy. There's a curiosity and a consideration to empathy that human beings can provide each other with, that they may not be providing each other with because they don't know. They haven't really explored the depth of empathy. So, you know, when people come to me and they ask me, oh, do you love this person? Do you love that person? Could you love a rapist? Could you love a person who's a murderer or a pedophile, whatever? And I say yes. You know, like, I couldn't do that. I'm like, okay, well, I have this level of empathy that I'm choosing to have because I'm interested in what makes a person perform and live the way they do. And that is my empathy space. And that's where I choose to be, and that's where I choose to explore. So if we're looking to, like, you know, with the current tide of the way the world is with racism after the murder of George Floyd, people are looking to dismantle racism. And so there's a lot of finger pointing and shaming and a lot of stuff like that, and not enough consideration. And I don't mean consideration in like you have to be nice to somebody. It's consideration like, do I consider where this person came from, where their family came from, what were the circumstances that led them up to these places? I want to know.
Well, I think it's something that until we got deeply into this work, I didn't understand it. And there's still tons more. There is cultural considerations of if someone's first generation American, if they're second generation American, if they're an immigrant, from which country. And then there's the cultural considerations of the family construct and the race construct and ethnicity, or the associations to an ethnicity. And it creates layer upon layer that one person really would have a hard time to consider all. However, when you understand it's layer by layer, it makes it easier to ask questions, to have some more information for understanding to consider.
Right.
You know, one of the things that you've said for a long time that I just love is, have you considered it? Being considerate, even just a little bit. It's something that is, I think, one of the most powerful curiosities, is to consider it. Yeah. Consider someone's background. And maybe you can't find the compassion for the adult. If you talk to someone long enough and you find out what's happened in their childhood, can you find compassion for that child that experienced quite often traumatic and tragic monstrosities? And what you start to find is bridges to empathy that maybe you didn't have before. And it changes how you receive and perceive someone.
Right.
And even in dealing with kids or teenagers or whatever, it doesn't mean there are not consequences for people performing or functioning a certain way. There are. And the consequences are, though, you know, that is a part of the game. But when it comes to wanting to dismantle or change bias, discrimination, racism, whatever it may be, it cannot and will not happen without consideration.
The consideration has to happen, or you don't get to shift the underlying belief structure. You don't get to change the underlying awareness space. If you cause somebody to hide, you shame them, you cause them to hide, that's wrong. I don't want to hear about it. It's wrong. It's bad. Lock them in, in the prison, do whatever you need to do, shut their business down, to, shame them online. It still
destroy them.
It still doesn't change the undercurrent of what's going on. And then it causes other people that are in a similar space to also hide. And so they may provide a front, but you're not getting into the space of them really understanding what's going on.
No, that covert functionality of operation, people are going to first protect their family and their business and survival, right? Survival mode is first. And this, especially the first few weeks, what I was seeing in particular with like white life coaches was the way that they were going for other coaches that they felt like weren't being anti-racist enough, right? Mm-hmm. There is such a huge difference between being anti-racist and working for anti-racism and the deconstruction of racism. And by alienating people versus educating them, you are performing as an anti-racist. That's not going to change the systems of racism that exist. Right. And it's taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture. Because quite honestly, to me, to go after one person for anything, to crucify them, what you're really creating is, even aside from the divisiveness, you are burning the opportunity to teach someone or open their perceptual, what they're considering for themselves, to get them on board.
Right.
Because most of the people we've watched be crucified are open to dialogue and conversation. So if we just step out to crucify, we could actually be doing more damage, because if someone has a large audience and you destroy them, you actually are losing the power that they could have utilized to teach.
Yep. And that's the important thing, man. These witch hunts and crucifixions and throwing people under the bus and locking people away in a tower and dungeons and shit.
It's kind of like a lot of smoke and mirrors, to be honest.
It is,
and it's not really helping the problem.
And it causes a lot more divide. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to talk about having solidarity means, standing together with each other. Empathy has to be there. We've got to be empathetic. We've got to be in a space where I get where you're coming from and I get it. Thank you for explaining this to me.
If I don't get it,
tell me more. Tell me more. Even if I still don't agree, at least I know where you're coming from. And this and slaying people for their actions. People are not their actions. They've done, because we've done things, and I'm not sitting here telling people to be excused for the shit that they've done. I think accountability is an important factor in our world. However, giving somebody the scarlet letter and painting them with the shame device that they will forever be this because they've done something, I believe is a highly dysfunctional point in our world when we don't get to the root of what drove a person to do what they did. If a person stole something, was it just because they were stealing to fuck around, or were they stealing because they were hungry, because their kids were starving? What was going on? Where's the empathy? Have you dug deep enough into the circumstance? If somebody lies to you, right? What drove them to lie? Where are they afraid? What are they protecting? What is the device? We did a whole podcast on lying. Mm-hmm. Go back and listen if you haven't. Check out our podcast on being a liar. We talk about these things. When you don't really get into the empathetic space, the active empathy, not just empathy that's just there, the empathy that you create as a human being. I am going to look into what's going on, and I'm gonna bring Bill Cosby up again because I always do. There's so many people that were slaying Bill Cosby, and I'm like, man, I wish I could have a conversation with this guy. So I can just, tap in and see if he's interested in talking about, hey, what happened to you, bro?
Yeah, and what was going on?
What was going on all your life, man? How are you feeling now? What's going on with you? What are the demons, man? If you want to talk about it, I'm here. I'm not going to talk to anybody else about it. I just want to hug you and let you know that you're loved, man, no matter what you've done. And that goes for anybody. I've taken care of people in the hospital that were mass murderers, that were gangsters, that killed a lot of people, that did a lot of stuff. I've dealt with people that were pedophiles, considered pedophiles, rapists, all of this stuff. And I've talked to all of them, and I asked them, would you be into sharing what drove you to move into this space? And they were like grateful that they had somebody that didn't judge them, that wanted to talk to them, that had some empathy, that had some selective, active empathy. And who knows how that's shifted their mindset to know that there's a person that could actually hear them or see them, regardless of, if you got to go to jail, you got to go to jail. Well, that doesn't stop you from being a human being.
No. And a lot of people say, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I refuse to teach people, look, to tote on one side being a leader and toggling in and out of, I'm going to be a leader, however, I'm not going to be a teacher. And look, there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's not a problem. It's just being really clear in what you're looking to participate in and how you're looking to contribute, whether that's contributing just to your own ass or a cause or whatever. But right now we're watching, or I have watched, I'll speak for myself, a lot of people that have claimed to be leaders that the thing that follows right after that is, but I'm not going to talk to them, or I'm not going to teach them. That's not my work. They need to do that work. And again, that's your choice to do. It's who are you looking to be for yourself? Who are you looking to be? If you're really about anti-racism, if you're really about solidarity, then it's looking at, if you're a white person, being in solidarity actually means, can you sit in the uncomfortable conversation with yourself? Not the accusatory witch hunt. That's actually easier to project anger and emotions, especially with how overwhelming the past 5 months have been. Mm-hmm. That I feel like what people are doing is using other people to discharge a lot of frustration, and that it's not the core wounding of they're trying to protect Black people. It's that they're frustrated, scared, uncertain. So let me just send all my anger and frustration in one direction that makes me at least look better to Black people.
And it sends the attention away from me.
Right.
It makes me, I'm in good.
And then no one can scrutinize that I'm not doing anything else the rest of the time. People aren't even having conversations in their own home with people they live with people they choose to be with.
They're not even having conversations in the mirror with themselves.
I know.
And this is a big part of it. What are you leading people into? You're a leader. You're a thought leader. What are you leading people into?
You're a parent. You're whatever. You're leading someone.
What are you leading people into? Are you leading people into a space of consideration and empathy? Or are you just leading them into more systems and separation, which is what we have already. We have lots of systems, complicated systems and separation. And it's not just racism that separates people. It's sexism, fascism, all the isms, put people into these boxes. And so if we can't consider, if a Jewish person can't consider what a Catholic person is experiencing and what they're thinking about and what they're feeling and why their religion is the way it is, how could you say that something is wrong? Because, there are multiple truths. Everybody has a different truth. And in order to really consider something else, you've got to consider somebody else's truth and where they derive it from, what they're feeling in their bodies, what their mind is thinking, how their family is affecting them. This is where empathy dwells, active empathy. And again, there is passive empathy when you walk into a space and you feel what somebody else is feeling, or you see somebody get hit by a car and you feel bad. These are empathetic spaces. However, as human beings, we have this gift of creative thought. Unlike any other animal on this planet. And empathy is a space that we can be creative. And when we can be creative in an empathetic space, I think it leaves us a lot of room to grow, a lot of room to connect, a lot of room to understand, and a lot of room for people who are doing things out of malice and who are doing things from hurt. Well, you can be hurt and do things to protect yourself, but you can also learn to do things creatively in a malicious space. Mm-hmm. And why are people doing malicious things? Are they satiated? Do they have what they need? Or do we just lock them away?
Well, and I think the need to identify, and think about it, if you're going after someone and you have decided that they are something, the I am, you have decided that they are this thing, identity, whatever. There are no definitives, none. Everything is true and nothing is true to someone. That includes gender identities, that includes race, that includes everything. Every truth exists on this plane. There are no universal truths. Gravity is not a universal truth. There are no universal truths. Divinity is not better than. right? Like, and this is even the idea that divinity is a wholesomeness, not a truth. So all of these things that people are creating is based on their own experiences. And even my association to empathy is a construct of my creation.
Right, it's relative.
And I watch just as many people with dysregulated nervous systems believe themselves to be empathetic when really they're in fight or flight all the time. And what they're perceiving is their own body that is reactive to environmental things that are triggering them. That is not empathy. And until you start to identify those things within yourself, what you may be calling empathy may not be empathy. Or on the flip side of that, you may be feeling things like anxiety that is not yours. So this is why the work that we do, I believe, is so important, because until you understand your own felt sense, your own awareness around how your body functions in different environments, around different people, different textures on your skin, different food in your body, you don't actually know what it is that you're perceiving.
Right.
You have to, that's a whole other experimentation until you're clear and understand what emotional, physiological, nutritional noise, like what actually brings clarity and what takes you further away from it. What you're perceiving is not an accurate depiction of another person.
No. Yeah. And you know, everybody is experiencing something different. Every truth is relative. And when you can see what your truth is for yourself and examine the depth of it, and then consider what somebody else's truth is and see how that I can sit here and tell you that this table is brown wood, and you could be like, no, this is charcoal gray. And it's relative to the individual. That was terrible.
Well,
that was a terrible one. I'd strike that from the record. So, I mean, some people might think that was a great example.
There you go.
So I don't know. It was terrible for me. So
I didn't think it was that bad. You've definitely had worse.
I can tell you multiple reasons why that was terrible. But anyway, so, the relativity of truth is really important when it comes to empathy and understanding what, really looking to, you could never really know what someone else is experiencing. They can tell you, and you can come to that median space.
You can consider,
but you can come to this median space of, I think I get it.
Or I can imagine.
Right. And so.
Just like I can imagine what a unicorn looks like. I have never ridden one yet.
And so for people to say things like racism isn't real, or God doesn't exist, or whatever, that may be God doesn't exist to me. Racism isn't real to me. What is it to you? And asking that question, what shit, man? You're in, I don't see racism as a big deal. Well, could you tell me about it? Could you tell me about how it affects you and your family? Can you tell me about the instances that you've seen? Can you tell me? We've got to go into things. We don't have to. You do whatever you want.
If you choose to, yeah.
I choose to move into things with a space of curiosity, and that curiosity is the opening point to my consideration.
Well, and if you're going to bridge this curiosity and this consideration, understanding language is paramount.
Yep.
Because until you understand, like if I'm going to ask someone, hey, I don't think that racism is a big deal, you're going to get immediate lashback by people that it is a big deal. So part of what we teach with leaders, content writers, people that are looking to pass along a message that is powerful is understanding language. So if I'm going to ask a question that invites connection and consideration in return, being mindful of the language is the most important part.
Yeah.
Because if I ask you, if I say, hey, Ta, I don't think racism is a big deal. Can you tell me about it? I'm probably going to get responses that are lashbacks because I'm saying that someone, or it could be received, that I don't believe that someone's experience is real, right? So it's going to a reframe, and maybe sitting and writing questions out for yourself first when it comes to building this skill, right. Where it's like, hey, Ta, so I've been thinking a lot about racism, and I feel like there's some things I don't see. Could you describe what racism means to you, how it shows up for you?
I just got a great idea, right? For all the people that are listening, that are business people and thought leaders, and they do work on Facebook and stuff. Facebook has a criteria for their ads. And if you put certain languaging in Facebook that could possibly offend any human being, it will get denied.
Right.
put any of your language into Facebook and just pump it in there and see if it gets rejected. Their offense
an ad, you mean?
Yeah, an ad. Their offenseometer is crazy. Like if you put something in there about race or somebody's body weight or anything like that could remotely trigger something in somebody that you haven't considered asking another person how they feel about something, that would be
on Instagram filter. I had tried to do an ad for your webinar and they denied it because it said racism. Mm-hmm. I'm like,
Yeah. anything that could they have a team that they put together that anything that could possibly offend a human being cannot be in any of their ads because it causes them too much problem. They've had lawsuits and all this other stuff. So they don't, if it could possibly offend anybody, if you have a picture of somebody on a scale, right, and anything indicating weight loss that can make somebody feel shame or whatever for who they are, it will block you from putting that ad up. Anyway, that's just something for my business folks, man. When you are considering another human being, anything that you think is small or insignificant could be huge and universal, monumental for another human being. So just considering, that space of another person and what they could possibly be going through that's driving them to be so defensive or to be so offensive. Well, what is driving that?
And learn language. We aren't taught it. And I don't think that, I am certain, and we witness how many people don't understand how shame is injected into our language, in the English language in particular. And this is something that we've become really passionate about and realize that it's something that we are so attuned to, which is why we can have these challenging conversations with people. So for anyone listening, if you've been you've been making attempts to enter conversations and you're getting destroyed, what's most likely happening is the language that you're selecting is shame-inducing and reactive-inducing. It's not your opinion that is doing it. It is how you're presenting your opinion.
Right.
Because most people are actually quite reasonable in hearing opinion as long as you're not challenging theirs or telling them they're wrong.
Yeah.
That's why what we do is so powerful and why we can enter conversations with people that are completely opposite of us, where we don't come under attack. Because even if someone comes with a fight, we're there to be like, hey, I see that you're upset. Tell me about it. Right? That is a skill that I'm understanding more and more is probably the most powerful thing that we teach.
Yep. And a lot of it is empathy. Really, consideration.
Absolutely.
Consideration is a huge deal.
It's like an embodied empathy.
Yeah, it's an active empathy. It's coming from a place of awareness. You can be passive. You can have passive empathy, you can have active empathy, and you can have selective empathy, which is relative to the individual. But being active in your empathy is a space of consideration. It's this space of tolerance and acceptance of another human being for their position and where they are. It doesn't mean you have to take abuse from another person. It's you're considering why a person performs the way they do. And, the main person to consider that with is yourself, that person in the mirror. So, we invite you to step in front of that mirror and ask, where's my empathy?
For me.
How do I feel with myself, for myself, about myself? Am I considering all of the reasons I perform the way I perform, the way I feel? Am I even
considering kindness to myself?
Mm-hmm. Am I considering why I'm not kind to myself? Where did I get this level of performance from? Where did it come from?
Or if I'm not hard on myself, I won't perform.
Mm-hmm. Where did all this come from? And then once you sit with yourself and you have a level of self-awareness, ask people around you. And for my listeners that associate as being white folks, these are conversations to have with yourself. If you're looking to dismantle racism and be allies and all this other stuff, what's going on with you? And then the people in your household, your partners, your friends, can you get into this space where you're starting to have empathy for each other and starting to understand where you are? Because everybody has a different vantage point, and it starts with you in that mirror.
And if you're driven to go out and with this idea that you're going to save Black folks, that's part of the issue too, is that they need saving, right?
Yeah. We don't need no saving, y'all.
So solidarity is we'll do a whole episode on that. I think that would be a really potent conversation. But for now, really checking in with yourself. If you aren't even slowing down to have consideration and kindness to the people in your own house, the people you choose to participate in your own life, then any chance of deconstructing, changing any societal constructs like racism is absolutely not going to happen. You might take some actions that make you feel better, but that's not going to change anything. So until next time, don't forget to rate,
review, subscribe, share with a friend.
And really, y'all, if you haven't left a review and there's something that really stuck out to you today, please take a moment and leave a review. It means a lot to us. It helps boost us in the algorithms. It just makes us feel good in our feel goods and stuff. And we love you so much.
Don't forget that webinar, by the way, at talkhole.com/racism.
Yeah, the one that Todd did is pretty incredible. Yeah. So check it out if you haven't already. Because you're our soul fam here on the podcast. If you go to talkhole.com/racism, you can use the coupon code. Yes, the coupon code. The coupon code soul fam, and you'll get half off because we love you.
We love you. And my name is Ta.
My name is Cole. We are Talk Hole.
This is the Mentor in the Mirror podcast. Be free.